Netflix series Dirty John is an interesting hybrid drama. It's the dramatisation of a podcast of the same name that garnered over 55 million listeners and which was originally adapted from a Los Angeles Times true crime investigation. While the miniseries is not the first podcast to be adapted to TV, last year's Homecoming is a notable example, the show marks the first true crime turned podcast turned TV drama, something we're likely to see a lot more of as podcasts soar in popularity and content makers become desperate for new source material. The 8-episode first season features Connie Britton giving an agonisingly credible portrayal of real-life mother Deborah Newell, a highbrow interior designer and 4-time divorcee in her late 50s. An eternal optimist to the dismay of her children, she's hesitantly ready to hit the dating scene again. Her first efforts are uninspiring, boring men who can't stop talking about their ex-wives. But then she thinks she's met the perfect man online, Dr. John Meehan, played with sleazy charm by Eric Bana in a rather unconvincing performance. When they meet for a candlelit dinner, she's quickly spellbound. He's handsome, charismatic, accomplished, and seems genuinely interested in her. After 4 failed marriages, Deborah feels that maybe she's found the real thing, especially when he tells her he served as an anesthesiologist in Iraq and spent a year with Doctors Without Borders. Their relationship develops quickly. Deborah swept off her feet, willing to overlook the way the quirky John wears his medical scrubs everywhere, even to formal events, and the instant suspicions of her 2 daughters. They're Veronica and Tara, played by Juno Temple and Julia Garner, respectively, both distrustful of this new man in their mother's affluent life.
Mom, there's something wrong with him. Do you not see that? Do you really believe that he doesn't want your money?
Hey, what's in the safe, kiddo?
Does he tell you where he's going? Oh, no. Do some snooping.
I hired a private detective.
Threats, harassment, intimidation.
Is it possible that's not him?
We need to figure out why he's lying to you.
The conspicuous red flags that arise as his coercive, controlling behaviour quickly becomes apparent will have you shouting at the screen in warning, but Deborah is oblivious. In fact, it's all a bit obvious to start with. A soapy script desperately in need of more complexity, with uninspiring, visually flat direction, next to no evidence of any cinematic sensibility, and little of the morbid curiosity that enthralls when you read the original story of what happened to Deborah Newell and her family.
Do you know, I am actually going to disagree with you about this. I came at this not wanting to see another series about violence towards women, but it's not about that. It's about this guy who had the chutzpah to carry out these cons his whole life and be this chameleon character. And I actually think Banner is pretty good at being charming one minute and subtly sinister the next. And it's the other interesting thing is the daughter's suspicions, and they investigate this guy and they find out all sorts of things about him. But the really interesting thing is that Deborah still wants that relationship with him. And it's really a story about a needy woman who will actually put up with a lot, alienation of her children, to be with this man in particular. And so I found it actually pretty damned interesting. And I thought Connie Britton's performance was fabulous. I think Juno Temple and Julia Garner are great as the daughters. And it does go back into his past history, past marriage, past life, and his upbringing as a kid with this horrible, horrible father, con man father. So, I thought it was pretty interesting and not, overtly violent, which I was relieved about.
It just needed more invention, I thought, to really lift off the page, as it were. It just didn't really come to life. I mean, it is very flat. It's like those old Hallmark television daytime dramas, it is so flat. The lighting's flat and, the whole thing is flat. And I thought Eric Bana is very flat as well, particularly in that first episode. And Temple, I think, is the best one. I mean, the best actor.
But,
she really
they're
lifts
so
things.
bratty, these daughters. And I like the way that she's going to counselling sessions. sessions.
Well, they're going together, the two of them, the mother and the daughter, the 24-year-old daughter. The whole thing is, I mean, it is an interesting look at the life of entitled Americans. I mean, there's that aspect of it, closeted, cut off from real life, totally. That's a pretty interesting aspect of it, I think. But overall, I found it pretty pallid and rather tedious.
Look, I'm going to give it 3.5 stars.
I'll give it 3.5 as well, even though I was nowhere near as enwrapped by it as you were.
I thought you were going to give it 2.
No, it's still a very interesting story, and I think people will be quite fascinated by the story.
Yeah, and I like Eric Bana, and I think he's quite solid in this.
I think this is it for you.
Yes, I do too. Oh, I'm so glad you like him, Mom.
I love him. Love him. Love him. Because he loves you.